Hello, this is Charles Epstein, host of the Catalyst Podcast. Today I'm joined by Michael Glowik and Emile Rutherford, co-founders of CogniTrainer, developers of a tool that provides an immersive AI-driven virtual practice environment to help students and mental health professionals practice communication and intervention skills, ensuring they are well prepared for real-world clinical encounters. Michael, Emile, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So I know you're coming in from two different locations. Emile, I know you're from Indianapolis, correct?
Correct.
And Michael?
I'm in Boston right now.
Oh, okay. But through the miracles of Zoom technology, here we are.
Yes.
Guys, I really do appreciate you taking time. I know it's a busy time of year. Everybody's doing year-end stuff, but I really have been looking forward to having this conversation. So really, thanks so much for taking the time. Maybe if you would give our listeners a brief background of the both of you, each of you, and of course, background and how the two of you met. Michael?
Yeah, sure. I'm a technologist. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been building data systems and websites and apps, et cetera, for many years. Was heavily involved in virtual reality and augmented reality, and now moved into artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I'll let Emile introduce himself.
Charles, we just both appreciate the opportunity to discuss this today. So my name is Emile Rutherford. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I do a couple different things currently, most of which is CogniTrainer and then an active clinical practice. So I have a doctorate in psychology, and I provide services to folks in the community and then do a lot of work for disseminating and implementing evidence-based practices. So thinking about how we take different types of interventions at scale and then practice them in clinical sites and how we train folks up to do that. So I work in a couple different projects that help really inform some of the background models that we use with CogniTrainer.
Excellent. So, and now, of course, give our listeners some background on how the two of you met this momentous occasion.
So, I under COVID, right before COVID, I had a virtual reality studio in one of the largest fashion studios in the world. And because of lockdowns, that went away. And so right after that, I was looking for a new project, and I got into, machine learning and artificial intelligence. And once I saw the wonders of, what LLMs could do, I was thinking of combining it with mental health. I was very interested in that. I'd gone to therapy in the past, and I was thinking, wow, this could be used as maybe a virtual therapist. And my idea was that when one goes to a therapist, there's usually something that they're trying to get off their chest, or they're trying to dig deeply into, and maybe they don't even know what it is. And sometimes that can take months, years, sometimes it never comes out. And I thought my hypothesis was that, using a machine that had some level of interactivity, it seemed like a human, you might be able to pick that out easier or more quickly because it's not another human being. So I started Life Coach AI, and I had a bunch of different ideas with that. I was working with, I have a few friends that are psychologists, and through one of them, Phil Llanos, who's a professor at City University in New York, I asked him if he wanted to get involved. He said, well, he was too busy, but he'd put the word out. And yeah, that's how I met Emile. And I'll let Emile talk.
Well, not wanting to put myself out of a job by developing virtual therapists, I think Michael and I, when we first started talking, and also wanting from a business sense to try and move into a sphere that wasn't populated by other folks that were building similar types of dynamics with AI, we decided to use it as a training platform. So thinking about how we could flip it 180 degrees from Michael's initial thought and think about the ways that we train individuals and use some of these language models to really kind of build nuanced interactive capabilities for people. It felt like it is met in a lot of ways, Charles.
Yes, indeed. So give our listeners a high-level idea of how CogniTrainer works.
So there's two sides to it. We build up avatars, virtual patients, and they're all different demographics. They could be young, old, different races, different maladies. A user can go in, they can speak or text with one of these virtual patients, and they can basically run through a session. And then Once that's over, we have a backend does analytics on the session, and given whatever modality they're working with, we can give feedback. So we call it our teacher's assistant, much like a teacher's assistant in college. So it'll go through the transcript, and then it will highlight where you've sort of hit the mark, and like maybe give you some encouragement where you've sort of missed the mark.
I think to add to that, there's been a pretty rich history of virtual patient simulations that have existed in medical training. So this can look a variety of different ways, whether it's human actors coming in, whether it's watching pre-taped sessions between humans, and then having individuals that will kind of interact with that in various ways. There have been computerized versions of that previous to CogniTrainer, which would entail hard-coded decision trees. So when we think about interacting with a computer system where it can give you maybe a clinical case vignette. So if we're thinking about a medical setting, you could have a patient that's coming in with various concerns or aches and pains, and then you can ask them questions. So essentially, there would be this kind of back and forth with a pre-scripted set of questions and then pre-scripted answers. That's existed in the behavioral health field. There's a lot of research on outcomes associated with engaging in virtual practice or patient simulations. What we see with CogniTrainer is it's a significant advantage towards these previous iterations of simulations. It's not hard-coded, and so we really offer much more nuance and depth. And then similarly, we can present a wide range of different characters and different in the context of mental health, different mental health diagnoses that someone might come to a clinician or a therapist with.
So you're saying that there obviously have been similar tools out there, but this is sort of the latest iteration. And to sum up, some of the advantages that you guys bring to the table, I suppose, with the ability to select an avatar, almost the ability to tailor a modality and almost the qualitative nature of the interaction. Would that be correct?
Well, it's like an evolutionary breakthrough. It's much different than before in that it's actually like interacting with another human being, in that you're not just restricted to, a multiple choice. Usually it's like a multiple choice, choose your own adventure sort of deal with the previous simulations. And this is like, you could talk to them about anything. You could ask them if they like pizza. You could ask them what they did last night, and they'll give you a different answer, like a human would on any given day. So it really is like an evolutionary leap in the field.
Do you have any metrics on success thus far? Not only just how this may lower the barrier, but might promote a longer term engagement.
So we work with, so just to background the company, we started out with Masters of Social Work programs, and working with them, we've worked with a number, but we've run pilots, and we've got really great feedback from the students, from the professors, and surveys saying that they love it. And so so on a 10 scale, most of the answers were like 8, 9, 10. They love it. They want to engage with it. They like the immediate feedback. They like that it's it feels like interacting with an actual person. They like that it's a private environment where it's literally them in a safe space, where they can make all sorts of mistakes, and they don't have to worry about hurting a patient. They don't have to worry about embarrassing themselves. So yeah, got a lot of great feedback, a lot of from multiple universities.
Emile, you obviously have at least one of your 2 feet in the academic world, where I'm assuming there has been generally more resistance to this kind of approach, these kinds of tools. Can you speak to that?
I think some of the resistance and hesitancy is just people not really having a clear idea of what it actually is. So, and the cultural zeitgeist, when someone says AI, it conjures up a lot of different images and a lot of different thoughts that people have. So when we've talked to universities that we've worked with and individuals that we've partnered with, I think the biggest hesitancy that people have, or the biggest pushback that they have, is that it's not going to help, or that if it does help, it's going to perpetuate stereotypes or bias. I think that exists in any type of training program or training modality. That's one of the main concerns. Then everyone also asks, what are the outcomes going to be? What we've seen, and is what Michael was referencing, with the students enjoying and engaging with the platform and finding it useful, a lot of the previous data that's come out from virtual patient simulations has been on increasing self-confidence and efficacy. So it's about the user's experience and feeling confident in interacting or delivering a specific intervention. There have been more distal outcomes that have been studied, and I think right now, because we're at the crest of the wave with technology, we're helping to kind of build that corpus of literature, is where we're currently presenting it. I think the main pushbacks is just unknown, and a lot of people worrying that it's not going to be helpful.
I see. So in other words, a lot of it is just a sort of inchoate resistance to AI because of all the negative connotations and the risks and the threats, some of which are not quite well defined, because a lot of it is kind of amorphous. Some of it is kind of specific. Understand that entirely. And I should say that I have had a trial with the system, and it is pretty remarkable how it simulates a real world, real interaction with another human being. So it's amazing how far the technology and how far you guys have taken it. As far as, resistance, how about some of the ethical considerations that attach to AI generally, whether it's using candidate selection, performance reviews, and so on and so forth? How do you address that concern if and when it comes up? How do you ensure that your tool is going to be used responsibly and in all the ways you could define the responsible use of an AI tool?
There are multiple factors we take into consideration. Part of it is that we might get it wrong, and we are always open to feedback and redevelopment. So when we work with our partners, it's a lot of iterative design process to make sure that we're providing the types of services that they would want. When Michael initially created Life Coach, which we've then merged into CogniTrainer, it was built with privacy and confidentiality in mind. So we don't have access to any user data. So we're not taking user data to inform on our models. We don't harvest any of it for other purposes. It is completely confidential and stays on the end user's computer. So when we partner with most of the universities that we're currently working with, instructors wouldn't have access to user data unless the user wants to share that with them. So I think part of it is we want to keep it private and confidential. Another element to it, thinking about the ethical considerations, is it's really in the end user's hands about what they choose to do with it. So we've created some of the feedback systems that can provide information on performance across different domains of interest. And an end user might decide that that's good enough for them and that they're confident in our systems. And we've gotten some very encouraging analytic feedback on comparative analysis for our system's ability to provide output versus humans that are providing output. So it's reaching a human-like level of specificity and providing feedback performance. But at the end of the day, if the end user wants to use that as the benchmark, or if they always want to have a human reviewer that's going to pull out 1 out of every 10 or 1 out of every 5 feedback reports that we provide for just kind of that human check on the end part of it. So there's a variety of ways. I think that, again, it's this iterative design process where we really want to address ethics from our standpoint.
I'm curious, how instruction agnostic is it? By which I mean, can you use the platform, the framework, for different training approaches and modalities? How flexible is it? To what extent can you use it for those purposes?
So we have avatars and we have teachers assistants that work right out of the box. And we also do bespoke work. So if one is using, motivational interviewing or ORS or something like this, we already have something that could work for you. If you have a specific modality, like one of our clients, Lighthouse and Chestnut, they have their own specific modalities that they use, and we can build that in. So we have.
You were reading my mind, Michael. That's exactly the point of reference. I know you guys work together. Full disclosure, I have a relationship of sorts with them, and I know that they have some very well-known and well-established interaction approaches, modalities, and so on and so forth. And they instruct their counselors in those approaches. So I was thinking of how they might be leveraging CogniTrainer to do exactly that.
Right. And so for example, as I mentioned, we have a number of universities that use it. And some of those teachers, they have very general MSW, class, let's say, and they can go in, they can make an assignment and say, hey, use Kyle and ask him about his, marijuana use, et cetera. And they can go in, they can use that. But then if they and they just to get a feel for, interacting with a client, but then if they wanted a specific feedback that we didn't have, like it wasn't motivational interviewing, it wasn't something else, we could then build that into their curriculum. So we could create a course with different lessons, and each lesson could have a different interaction with an avatar. And that could be done in a bespoke manner. And as far as Chestnut goes, they're using RMC and CRA, their particular modalities, and we've taken it, or most of the heavy lifting was done by Emile as far as, the mental health modality and putting it into our teacher's assistant. But we can take any sort of modality and then put it into our teacher's assistant and give their users feedback based on that modality that they're training on.
So ultimately, CogniTrainer is, for lack of a better way of putting it, a learning platform that can go in any number of directions.
Yeah, that's right. And we're moving into police training right now. That's like one of our big initiatives. So it's like any sort of training that involves role play, CogniTrainer can be part of that.
Yeah, we touched on this in our pre-production call. Tell our listeners a little bit more about what this police project is all about. That sounds really exciting.
Well, one of our sales guys lives in Missouri, and one of his friends from high school was just elected state senator there. And he was backed by the police union, et cetera. And so we spoke with the senator and then the folks on his team, and they saw what we were doing. Like, oh my God, this is next level. We need to use this for police training. And so that's like sort of been the impetus for us to get into police training. And just like as Kismet, we have like a number of other offers that have come in recently too from different police departments through different folks. So it seems to be like in the zeitgeist right now. Yeah.
And I think just driving into the exact way that we imagine some of this training occurring. So if we just look at kind of more pop culture views on policing and kind of what's been in the ethos in the past 5 years or so, interactions are coming up constantly on social media about like not great times between cops and folks that they're policing. Right? And so whether that's confrontation, whether we're viewing officers being aggressive, whether we're viewing them perpetuating or demonstrating like racial bias or discrimination. So we can think about very comprehensive foundational communication skills that we can work with folks on. So if I'm going to help train an officer and have them not just watch a PowerPoint and regurgitate, a multiple choice question at the end of it to pass their continuing education units or the way that police are structuring ongoing training, but instead we have them demonstrate their ability to utilize those skills in their own language. So one thing that we really want to impress on, and we mentioned this at the beginning of the call, CogniTrainer doesn't use pre-selected or pre-scripted information. The individual has to use their own language and has to use their own skill in communicating with the system.
Yeah.
We can work on various factors for policing, whether that's de-escalation, handling and discussing mental health crises with people, again, like working with different types of communities, and if they have any community engagement. So really it can run the full spectrum of ways that we can think about this as a training platform.
Yeah, no, it's an amazingly powerful and flexible framework. I'm curious, since launching CogniTrainer, what have you learned? What preconceived ideas did you have to rethink? What course corrections did you have to make?
Well, I can jump in on that because I think that some of it started initially with when Michael and I first created this interactive role play environment for mental health training. And in my mind, it was to just provide folks open-ended sandbox role plays with different avatars and personas that we create. And then what we quickly found was they wanted the performance feedback. That was a major part of an ask that we had from individuals. And it was in some ways to make an educator's job easier. So as they're dealing with increasing class sizes, they have less time with students. And as many training programs are moving online, and particularly asynchronous online courses, They want their students to be able to have this experience, and then they also want it to provide the feedback performance. I think Michael would disagree with me on the surprise factor. I was most surprised that everyone had voice functionality. I prefer interacting in a text-based function. I find that much easier and more fluid for myself, and it gives me time to think through. But the majority of the customers we want the audio capability where you can talk to the system and it'll speak back to you.
Your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I think so. I thought that, so just like Emile said, there's like, we have text based, we have audio based, and we have video that's also coming online. So I guess I was surprised how much the students at these MSW programs really do like the text interactions. I thought they were going to want voice more than text, but like, I think it's probably like 50-50 at this point. I mean, I think it's a difference between like slow thinking and then like really quick thinking, right? So if you're a student and you're like a new student and you haven't interacted with folks before at a clinic or a hospital or whatever, it really gives you time to think about what you're going to say, and then when you write it out, it really it helps the learning process, right? So I think we got some really great feedback from the kids that they love that. They also love the feedback. So I don't know. I think just like Emile said, it's the feedback part of it, and then the audio versus text, but also people have been asking for video. I guess I didn't see that coming either, but yeah.
This technology is moving so fast. And by technology, I'm really talking about AI, but technology generally speaking. And it's almost talking about hard to know, hard to predict. But I think it's a safe bet to assume that it's going to be moving a lot faster than we may think. And that's not even talking about AGI or anything like that, although that's probably here sooner than we think. What are some of the next iterations that you see coming online with CogniTrainer? What are some of the things that you envision this evolving into, given the pace and the power of this technology?
Right. So definitely video. We're working on video. So just like we're looking at each other over a Zoom call, it would be the same sort of thing where students sitting here, they see an avatar, a very realistic avatar. And they can speak to them over like a Zoom call, if you will. And then, yeah, just we have, instant feedback that's on the roadmap that's coming very soon. So right now, a student goes through, they go through this session. At the end of the session, they export the session, and then they're given the feedback. But we'll be giving real-time feedback relatively soon.
Emile?
The ability for us to process and kind of encapsulate more information in the feedback systems is, I think, the biggest shift that I've seen. So, Michael and I are really trying to stay just right ahead of the curve on all of this. And what we've seen is, even in the past 2 years that we've been doing this, the underlying technology and some of these just various large language models that we use to program in both the avatars and the feedback system have evolved as well. So our capacity for creating ever more complex and accurate feedback mechanisms is improving. So thinking when we first started working with Chestnut, our ability to offer them comprehensive feedback is very different from where it is now. And so that's continually involving us updating the way that we can give them that nuanced feedback, whether it's quantitative or qualitative scales. That's the biggest shift that I've seen. I think what will also just hopefully from our business standpoint be integrated into a lot more service settings. So this doesn't have to be a long 20-minute conversation with an avatar in which you provide an overarching intervention or you deliver some type of communication skill. They can be small snippets. So if I have a yearly refresher on my learning management system through my workforce that has to do with identifying sexual misconduct in the office, right? That's something that's pretty common in large organizations. And that's something that you practice, for like a yearly reminder. So our hope is this can be really integrated more complexly into different organizations, and then our feedback systems will get more nuanced as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Last question, since we're on the cusp of the new year, what would make for a productive 2025 for CogniTrainer? I know it's a big question, so whichever one answers first, by all means.
Well, we're like I said, we're really going headfirst into policing. So like we're really excited about that. But also there's a lot of interest based on what we've done with like Chestnut Lighthouse. There's a lot of interest working with other similar organizations. So that's what excites me, both of those things. And being able to help a lot of folks, like I really that is just like it's good karma. You know what I mean? If you can help a cop have a better interaction with a suspect, help them de-escalate better. I don't know. I think that's amazing.
And you do come at this from both the standpoint of being a technologist, right? And I think you said at the outset, somebody who's been to therapy, so
Yeah.
you know what it requires.
Right. And yeah, and Emile's like so like I'm the tech guy and the business guy, and Emile is like our subject matter expert for mental health and training. So it's like we make a good team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Emile, you're not off the hook.
No, I know I'm not off the hook. I think for a more productive year, it'd be having 10 more hours in every day. So it's incredibly time intensive. So just thinking about the continual research meetings that we have with some of our partners to figure out these analytic feedback mechanisms. I mean, it's a very iterative development process. Other than having more time, I'm really excited about some of the partnerships we're creating with larger institutions and structures. So as we think about bringing on team members and advisory boards that are going to help inform this, all of it's hopefully going to fall into place in a very piecewise manner. So we have implementation scientists that I work with closely to think about, okay, we've developed this great training tool. How do we put it in people's hands? Right? Like, how do we help this be like a very usable experience? That really excites me. And then I think working at systems level, I mean, some of the projects that we're considering in organizations we're talking to is not just training, let's say, police in a community or training mental health workers or students in a community, but all of the different stakeholders that interact with folks from like a service provider perspective. Pie in the sky dream, which I think is not maybe 25, but probably 26 or 27, is we can really implement training that's going to help create this consistent training for folks from a lens of really strengths-based, human-centered approach to working with people and interacting with them. This might sound like I'm an ideologue, and I am going to try and proselytize all of this right now, but we can get child welfare workforce, if we can have social workers and community resource workers, if we can work with people that are providing substance use treatment or agencies that work with people that are unhoused, people at the Department of Human Services offices that help people sign up for Medicaid and Medicare. This whole circle of service providers that interact with people, they can all have this kind of consistent approach. I think we could see some real significant change and outcomes for people.
Thank you for ending this on an upbeat note, Emile. Obviously, we're doing this in the teeth of the holiday season, so any bit of uplift is welcome. Thanks so much. I want to thank the both of you, and I also want to wish the both of you a happy and a healthful and a productive 2025 for you, your families, and of course, CogniTrainer. So again, thanks so much for coming on. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Appreciate it.
Today, I was joined by Michael Glowik and Emile Rutherford, co-founders of CogniTrainer. CogniTrainer provides an immersive virtual practice environment to help students and mental health professionals practice communication and intervention skills, ensuring they are well prepared for real-world clinical encounters using AI. Michael joined us today from Boston, Emile from Indianapolis, I, of course, from South Florida, here in sunny Boca Raton. This is Charles Epstein for the Catalyst Podcast. Thanks for listening.